All right, guys. Again, we're going backwards now with radians. So I'm literally going to start with the first one I started with last time. It literally is the exact same thing. Your test is going to look exactly the same, except you're going to answer all in radians, whether it's non-calc or calculator. So you're finding here, these are your answers. You're finding all angles between 0 and 2 pi. Those are the angles. Those are all your answers if you're finding an angle. Okay, so I look at this answer and I say, okay, I know sine is negative, have to be in the third and fourth quadrant. I have to figure out what the reference angle is. So I draw my triangle. You pick one of these quadrants. I'm going to pick the third quadrant. And I'm going to label the angle opposite over hypotenuse. So that's 1 over 2. Of course, I ignore the negative. I'm not going to put a negative side in there. This is root 3. So I recognize that the reference angle is 30. That's the only thing I'm going to write that's degrees, the reference angle. So if the reference angle is 30, 30 is pi over 6. So is pi over 6 an answer? No, pi over 6 is not an answer because that would be the first quadrant answer. But I'm going to make this 6 pi over 6, and I'm going to make this 12 pi over 6. Never use 90, never use 270. So we're just going to use pi and 2 pi, or 0. So if I want this angle, I have to go to 6 pi and 1 more. So this answer is going to be 1 more than 6 pi over 6, which is 7 pi over 6. And then if I want this angle, I'm not going to go all the way to 12 pi over 6. I'm going to go 1 less. So I'm going to go to 11 pi over 6. So those are my 2 answers. Never do I go to degrees and convert. I automatically look at this. I'm either going to be 1 less or 1 more. Or I look at this and I'm going to be 1 less. I'm never going to be 1 more over here because if I'm in the first quadrant, then I would just use pi over 6 as my answer. Okay? Okay, let's take a look at another one. I'm going to say secant of theta equals 2. Okay, so I draw my picture. Secant, in my mind here, I'm thinking cosine because they're reciprocal functions and I flip the 2. So I'm thinking cosine is equal to 1/2. All students take calculus. We know that we're positive in the first and the fourth. So those are the 2 quadrants I'm in. I pick one and I draw my triangle. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. I know this is root 3, so my reference angle is 60. Again, that's the only degrees I'm going to write. 60 degrees is pi over 3. So I know my reference angle is pi over 3. Is that going to be an answer? Yes. That's my first quadrant answer. So one answer is pi over 3. Now I have to get the fourth quadrant answer. So I can do this over here and do 3 pi over 3, but I don't really need it because 1 less is the second quadrant, 1 more is the third quadrant. That's not where I want to be. I want to be in the fourth quadrant. So I need a 3 in the bottom. I'm going to make this 6 pi over 3. Whoops, I just went over 6 pi over 3. And so if I go all the way around, I'm 6 pi over 3. I'm 1 less, so that's going to be 5 pi over 3. 1 more, 1 less. 1 more, 1 less. That's always what it's going to be. When we're finding an angle, how many answers are we going to get? We're going to get 2 answers almost every single time, unless it's a unit circle type situation. Okay, so let's think of, I'm going to think tangent of theta equals -1. If I see a 1 or a -1 and a 0, I think unit circle every time, unless it's tangent. If you see a 0, automatically it's unit circle, automatically. But when you see a 1, you think unit circle unless it's tangent. This is tangent, so this is not unit circle, so I am going to draw my triangles. All students take calculus. I want to be negative, so I'm not in the first and I'm not in the third because that's where tangent is positive. I pick one of the quadrants and I draw my triangle. This is over 1, right? So opposite over adjacent is 1. That tells me the reference angle is 45. 45 is the only degrees I'm thinking of. I'm going to make that pi over 4. Is pi over 4 an answer? No, it is not, because pi over 4 is the first quadrant. So I need to get a second quadrant and a fourth quadrant. So this is normally pi, but I need a 4 in the bottom. I'm going to say that's 4 pi over 4. This is normally 2 pi, but I need a 4 pi in the bottom. So I get 8 pi over 4. So now this is 1 less than 4 pi over 4. So my one answer is 3 pi over 4. Fourth quadrant answer, I want to be 1 less than 8 pi over 4. So I'm 7 pi over 4. Those are my two answers. Notice, reference angle is 45, which is pi over 4. 3 pi over 4 is 1 less. 3 pi over 4 is 1 less, which means second quadrant. 7 pi over 4 is 1 less, which when you're coming this way, that's 1 less than 8 pi over 4. Okay, let's think about this. Sine of theta equals 0. I draw my draw my picture. I see a 0, I think unit circle unless it's tangent. This is not tangent, so I need to think unit circle. So I'm thinking about all my quadrantal angles here, and I'm thinking sine. Sine is just the y value. So I want to know, where is the y value on all these ordered pairs? It's so important to know those ordered pairs correctly. Where is the y value? 0. There and there. So one answer is right here. What's that angle? Well, you may say it's 2 pi or 360, but if you remember up here, our original answer here does not include 2 pi. 0 and 2 pi are coterminal angles. They're the exact same angle. We're just going to say the answer is 0. So theta is going to equal 0. And then what's this angle here? Pi. So those are my two answers. This is an example where on the unit circle I did get two answers. What's an example where I would only get one? Well, how about we do a 4b here? If I said sine of theta equals 1, where is the y value 1? The only place is here, so that would only be one answer, and the answer would be pi over 2, which is 90 if you think of it that way. Okay? If you got the idea at this point, go ahead. I'm going to do one more just for those that still maybe want to see one more. Let's see. I'll do cosine this time. So I'll do cosine of theta equals negative root 3 over 2. So I think to myself, where is cosine negative? Well, cosine's positive in the first and the fourth, so I can't be there. I'm going to draw my triangle. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So you should recognize this triangle and say, oh yeah, this is a 30-degree reference angle. Reference angle is pi over 6. Pi over 6. So this is 6 pi over 6. This is 12 pi over 6, but I won't really need this over here because I'm only dealing with these quadrants 2 and 3. So I want to get that angle. Well, that's 1 less than 6 pi over 6, so it's 5 pi over 6. And in the third quadrant, I'm 1 more, so it's 1 less, 1 more. Much easier and much quicker. You should get quick at that rather than converting to degrees. That's why I'm always like, don't convert to degrees. Okay, keep emailing me if you have questions.